We can reveal this morning that civil servants delayed compensation plans for grooming gang victims. Several government sources have told us that attempts to raise the issue were pushed into the long grass by senior officials.
Well, a government spokesperson from the civil service said that timely advice is provided to ministers to help them make decisions in line with the Civil Service Code.
To tell us more on this one, let's speak now to GB News national reporter Charlie Peters on this one. Charlie, this is your investigation. And matter of fact, Elon Musk, did he not praise what you did on this front?
He shared a few of our stories last week and some of my coverage, yes, a couple of my threads on his platform, X.
And I mean, that's got to be good, hasn't it, in terms of highlighting the evils that have been allowed to permeate on this subject for years.
Yes, Eamon, but at the same time, it's sort of distressing that it's taken a billionaire like Elon Musk to put the global spotlight on this appalling national tragedy. But with this surge in attention, more and more reporters are now looking at this story. But over the last few years, it's felt like just a handful of us have been regularly churning out the coverage on this issue.
What I don't understand, Charlie, is why politicians would be so reluctant not to get involved in this again. I know there was an inquiry, 8 years ago or so, but why not? Why not do the right thing? Why not get the right thing done on this?
Well, we've had a handful of local reports: Rotherham, Rochdale, Telford, Oldham. Some of them have been good, some of them less so. The big scoop we had last week was revealing that Jess Phillips, the safeguarding minister, had denied a national public inquiry into the Oldham scandal, as demanded by survivors there. They did not appreciate the local review. They didn't think it was enough. And you're right to say we have had some form of national inquiry already, the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse. But many survivors and campaigners, and indeed myself, think it's a sham. It only looked at a handful of areas where grooming gangs were taking place. The Catholic Church, Jimmy Savile and children's care homes all received specialist investigations within ICSA. On-street grooming gangs were just a part of a smaller paper on organised networks. This has never, ever been properly addressed and assessed by the British state. There has never been a thorough investigation. At GB News, we found over 50 different towns and cities where this was going on. The independent inquiry looked at 6. None of them are on that list. It is a sham. For West Streeting to hide behind it and say we need to do more, we can look back at this report. I'm afraid it's not good enough. Survivors I've been speaking to aren't good enough. And today we can reveal further that government sources have told GB News that in the last couple of years, when they've been looking at the financial redress scheme for victims of sexual abuse, and in particular grooming gang victims, civil servants have said, not now, not later, not on this. They've pushed it into the long grass. Compelling government sources from the Home Office, Cabinet Office and the Treasury, all working in Number 10 as well during the Sunak administration, have told us that civil servants did not want to hear it when political aides pushed forward demands for this sort of compensation for grooming gang victims. So there are a lot of questions for the government at the moment. Why are you promoting the ICSA report, which didn't do anything, really, on-street grooming? In 400 pages, Rotherham gets one mention. Rochdale's only referred to with regards to Cyril Smith, the Lib Dem MP.
Yes.
And there's also questions now
white,
about...
incidentally.
Absolutely. And there's also questions about this compensation scheme.
Yeah, so does this theory exist that this would be racist if you investigated this or if you highlighted this?
I think that has been undoubtedly the most chilling factor preventing investigation. People being so neutered by political correctness, so terrified of looking into this due to the ethnic disparity between the predominantly Pakistani grooming gangs and the predominantly white working class victims. That has been an issue for decades. Anne Cryer, the Labour MP in the early 2000s, she was called a racist for caring about it. Jack Straw was shut down for saying there was a problem. Sarah Champion, the Labour MP for Rotherham, she was kicked out of the front bench for looking into this. So many Labour figures who've tried have been shut down. Conservatives have found it easier to talk about it. Reformers we've seen are finding it easier to talk about it. But no Labour figures, since our investigation, have come out and said, he's right, we're right, there's a big problem here, we need to take this on. That's a real, well, it's a real disappointment, but it's also a real shame for the survivors who are fighting for justice.
All the parties have been involved in this in some way. What are the Labour Party saying, Ellie?
Well, they're saying that they're pointing to the independent inquiry into child sex abuse. They're saying there's already been a national inquiry. They've also given us this statement saying that all complaints are treated seriously and thoroughly assessed in line with our rules and procedures. Complaints are assessed via a specific process independent of the leader's office. And this was clearly signposted in response to this correspondence at the time. Also got a statement from the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, who said on Jess Phillips, the Minister for Safeguarding and Violence Against Women and Girls, has dedicated her career to tackling sexual violence and abuse and to being a voice for victims and survivors of the most terrible crimes, including child sexual abuse. She has worked with whistleblowers and campaigned tirelessly for justice for those badly let down by endemic institutional failure. So that's what Labour have had to say about all of this.
Well, if that's the case, why would she not go at this again until this is finally solved? There's too many just unanswered questions, aren't there?
Well, in the letter that we revealed last week from Jess Phillips to Oldham Council, she said that she understood the strength of feeling in the town, but that she pointed to original local inquiries that have taken place. Just very quickly on this, that local inquiry in Oldham was just for 3 years, 2011 to 2014. This week, GB News is going to reveal further details that report missed from Oldham. Demonstrating why they want a further inquiry. So watch this space. We're going to show just why they're making that demand.
I can't see why Jess Phillips would be saying, well, we've done our bit, thank you, that's it, let's not forget it. I have interviewed so many people who have been abused over the years on this, and they are traumatised. This haunts them for their whole lives. And we're going to say, oh, it's OK, it's done, it's on, you know.
Let's move on now.
Let's move on now.
That's what they're keen to do, but we have to return this conversation back to the survivors' experience and their demands. And that's why this week GB News will be touring the nation. I'll be going to various different towns and cities where survivors are speaking to GB News and victims are campaigning for more action. Later today, I'll be in Tenside. Tomorrow, I'll be in Oldham, and we'll be further places throughout the week.
Good lad, good lad.
Speaking to more survivors about this issue.
And it's right.
Now, another big story, civil servants delayed compensation plans for grooming gang victims.
Yes, several government sources have told GB News that attempts to raise the issue were pushed into the long grass by senior officials.
A government spokesperson from the civil service said timely advice is provided to ministers to help them make decisions in line with the civil service code.
Well, Marlon, the father of a grooming gang survivor, spoke exclusively to GB News to share correspondence with Jess Phillips, where she rejects calls for a national inquiry. He's frustrated that Labour are turning down calls for this process. Well, joining us now is CEO and founder of Freedom for Abuse, Marilyn Hawes. Good to see you this morning, Marilyn. I mean, this is shocking, isn't it? It feels like every day there's another layer to all of this. And it seems as though civil servants have delayed attempts to even get compensation for these survivors.
Well, I admire the press. I think the media are doing a great job keeping this in the public view, and it has to keep on happening because even like with Telford, the gangs in Telford, there was a report in August this year that said people knew for 40 years this was going on and over 1,000 children were abused. Can I just say these are not grooming gangs. These are exploitation, rape and drug gangs with brutal consequences. They will think nothing about pouring petrol over you, burning you, encouraging the young teenagers to stab other young teenagers that are just joining the gangs. My fear with Keir Starmer is that he will come out and say something that just skims the surface, just enough that makes him think the media will go away, and he won't dig down deep enough. This problem is endemic across the whole of the UK. Andy Burnham knew about this in the mid-90s. I've known about it for over 20 years. Nobody does anything. And the awful situation with Jane Senior. Now, Jane Senior...
But before we go into him, because, I mean, you're talking about a number of people there. Basically, what we're dealing with, and listening to the civil servant statement, and they talk about the civil service code of conduct. I mean, basically, we're talking about, and Starmer's a civil servant. That's what he is by profession. You know, that's what he does well. What I can't understand is, in the interests of children, and I have met, like you, so many of them over the years. Why is no one interested in getting it right or seeking vengeance or justice for children?
Strap yourself in, as I'm going to say the awful words, racism. I have had so many emails from former police officers in the last few days, because I've done a lot on media, and these are very, very high up officers who said they were paranoid during that time, and I think they still are. Their job was
but let me ask you this, Marilyn.
Relations
but
stable.
Marilyn, what is racist about getting bad people? What is racist about getting people who are sexually interfering with children?
The whole idea back then, and it's still the same now, is, oh, we must not raise the race relations. We've got to pretend everything's calm, everything's lovely in our multicultural country. And it isn't. This is about realism. You cannot get away from the fact that predominantly, yes, white men are involved in this, but to call them Asian gangs as well is wrong. You do not see the Japanese, the Chinese, the Indonesians behaving in this way. I have a letter this morning from a lady who was literally working on Oldham Council, which I can send to you. And in fact, I have sent it to you, to one of your researchers. It was in my inbox, who tells the horrific things that went on at Oldham Council, the cover-ups, the threats. Jane Senior at Rotherham was another one, threatened and bullied. She was awarded an award by the Queen in 2016, and yet Starmer's office refused to meet her. Now, you know, I saw the thing from the minister's thing. They said, I'm going to implode if I hear this statement much more. Lessons have been learned. No, they haven't. No, they haven't, because nobody wants... I mean, this is an embarrassment to the UK. What we are going through is an embarrassment, but it is now embedded across every town, city, across the UK. I don't know how they're going to get rid of it. Because
one of the real ways we get rid of it
40 years ago
is people in the Pakistani community who will, you know, just distance themselves from this, condemn this, and stand up and say, this is not all people of Pakistani heritage involved in this.
No, but some are. And predominantly, of course, you've got ridiculous to say. I mean, we've got an Indian restaurant down the road from me. They're Bangladeshi. They couldn't be more charming. They're horrified at what's going on. Of course, it's not every Pakistani, every Bangladeshi. Of course, it's not. But predominantly, we've all got horrible people in whatever culture you're in. But predominantly, it is Pakistani and Bangladeshi. You've only got to look at the mugshots. Do you know what? I had an email from a former police officer the other day, because you try and get the statistics from the ONS, the Office of National Statistics. You try and get the statistics from them about the ethnicity of gang members that they convict. Yes. Oh, we don't have them. We don't have. That's utter rubbish. As this former police officer, who was a chief superintendent, said to me, that's nonsense, because whatever the crime is, whatever report we do, we have to tick the ethnicity box. So they do know, they just don't want to divulge it. And the cover-ups are awful. I mean, it is absolutely shocking, but it's across the country, Eamon. This is the point. You can see it everywhere, and no one wants, and a lot of people in their communities. So, like, every culture, doesn't it? It has its own thing. And the Pakistani Bangladeshi community are very closed in disclosing what might go on or what might happen. They don't want, it's almost shameful
Marilyn,
to say.
we've got to leave it there. We're out of time, but I think the thing is, the big disgrace in all of this, I mean, yes, the perpetrator's awful, but politicians who play games, who stand in the way of all of this and do not want to do the right thing, I think you should vote them out. Vote them out.
I think we need to get rid of them. Absolutely get rid of them. I wouldn't vote. I wouldn't trust them with my dustbin, quite honestly. I mean, they're outrageous. They seem to go into politics and sell their soul and breathe a different sort of oxygen. How can you turn your back on this? It is, they should, you see, this is what gets me. If we had another inquiry, if we had a statutory inquiry, nothing ever happens. Alexis J raised this in the ICSA inquiry that cost millions. And her recommendations haven't been taken up. We need action.
Marilyn, what do you make then of Labour saying pretty much what you just said there, that actually this is the time now for action and these changes need to be implemented? Do you think that's the way forward, or do you think there needs to be a national inquiry, that we're not done?
Well, I think we've had enough inquiries because nobody ever does anything when their inquiry report comes out. I mean, we need mandatory reporting, for example, that if you don't report this stuff, you yourself will go to prison. I mean, that's what we need. We need to be upstanders, not bystanders. And we need to not be afraid of telling the truth about who these gangs are. And you've got to name it, you've got to shame it. Yeah. And I've had so much support from the public who feel exactly the same way, but are not given the airtime.
We're getting that reflected here today. Marilyn, say we've got to leave it. Marilyn is the top person, the founder of Freedom from Abuse, and she was speaking to us live from Bedfordshire this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't know how they sleep at night, Eamon.
Well, I tend to agree. I think it's the biggest crime of all, crime against children.
Need arresting.
Yeah. Okay.
These people that covered up should be arrested and charged and banged up.
Okay.
And taking their pensions away.
That's what Marilyn thinks. Marilyn, got to leave it there. That's what Marilyn thinks. What do you think? Let us know.